everyone, what's going on? On September 7th this year, the major news story in the media was of the death of white rapper Mac Miller. And if you've been following my blog and my YouTube channel, I've been mentioning how a lot of the mainstream media articles as of late are all centrally themed around the not standing during the national anthem, the flag symbolism, and how it connects to the War of 1812. In the War of 1812, Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. And think about how it connects to football even. The football season opened up this year. The Eagles beat the Falcons 18-12 even. And moral of the story, Mac Miller, he died by the same central theme. His death was all about the national anthem. And I'm going to show you why in this video. If you go back on September 3rd, that was a really big day in regards to all kinds of interesting stories, such as Colin Kaepernick becoming the face of Nike, right? Or whatever it was, Colin Kaepernick and Nike was the major story. That same day, we also got a story about Roseanne Barr and how she's going to be moving to Israel when the new TV show The Conners comes out. We also got MGK, another white rapper, dissing Eminem, another white rapper. And just think about it, M, Marshall Mathers. Think about it. Mac Miller, MM. We'll talk about that as we move on here. But let's look at their deaths, or let's look at the stories on 9/3, and I'm going to come back and explain to you. It'll make more sense, at least, in regards to Mac Miller. So, all them stories came out on September 3rd, which is the day that leaves 119 days in the year. And the reason that's important is because if you write out the Star-Spangled Banner in Gematria, it equals 119. And if you're new to Gematria, what it is, it's the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And, it stems back to things such as Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism that has a belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. And the more and more you apply this, you see how every day our mainstream media, our sports leagues, our history, it has all been coded this way. It's all by a numerical code. And basically, the people who control our mainstream media are using it and using this system of ancient knowledge to manipulate our minds and, manipulate just to keep us enslaved, to control over us. The same people who control the media control the sports leagues, they control, what we're taught in school. But anyway, just look at the overlap here. The Star-Spangled Banner equals 119, but it also equals 88. Look at Colin Kaepernick's name in Gematria. Colin Kaepernick equals 88, just like the Star-Spangled Banner, just like the word kneel. The Star-Spangled Banner was actually written because of Francis Scott Key saw the Great Garrison flag was still standing. Great Garrison flag equals 88. Can't remember the lady's name. Whatever the lady's name who sewn that flag, something Pickersgill, her name equals 88 in Gematria, and she even died on the day that leaves 88 days in the year. Also, we got Trump as the president right now. Trump equals 88. And last year, during the Super Bowl, that was all about the flag symbolism, because the flag was sewn at 239 Arch Street in Philadelphia. And then Philadelphia went on to win the Super Bowl. But 239 is the 52nd prime number. Think about Super Bowl 52. Donald Trump called out the people for kneeling on the date of 23/9, and much, much more. They went on to tell us Donald Trump weighed 239 pounds just before the Super Bowl. And anyway, that Super Bowl is played at U.S. Bank Stadium. That equals 88 in Gematria. And think about it, U.S. Bank Stadium. We're currently in the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash when Herbert Hoover was the president. H is the 8th letter. Think about it. HH 88. And Herbert Hoover just so happened to be the guy who signed the Star-Spangled Banner to be the official national anthem into Congress in 1931. And of course, look, Herbert Hoover, 159, just like Donald Trump, 159. That's also why the day after the Super Bowl, the major headline in the media was market meltdown, because the stock market had dropped a whole bunch of points and whatnot. Then before that, it had dropped 666 points. That's why we got that story all around the Super Bowl U.S. Bank Stadium, because it's synced up to the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash. It's interrelated into the national anthem. Donald Trump even born on Flag Day, of all days, the guy who's calling out all this kneeling and, respecting the flag, and then he's literally born on Flag Day. Oh, the odds, That's why Justin Timberlake was singing the halftime show last year, because the last time he was in the halftime show at the Super Bowl is when he showed Janet Jackson's boob, and she was singing songs off her album called Rhythm Nation 1814 that she says is in honor of the year Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. So anyway, all of these stories then, Eminem and Colin Kaepernick and Nike, and also Roseanne Barr, they all came out on the date of 9/3. And what's interesting about this is, look at Colin Kaepernick's full name. Colin Rand Kaepernick equals 93, just like the date. And if you look up the swoosh in Nike, it's supposed to represent Saturn's rings, right? Or Saturn's ring. And Saturn just so happens to be very important. Saturn is the keeper of time. He's the, Saturn L is the Phoenician bull god. It's very important to these people. The Jews absolutely worship Saturn. Everything about them is Saturn. Roseanne Barr even studies Kabbalah openly. She openly admits she studies Kabbalah. Ariana Grande openly admits she studies Kabbalah. And she used to be the former girlfriend of Mac Miller that I'll talk about later. But notice Saturn also equals 93, and Saturn equals 69, just like Nike. Nike equals 69. Oddly enough, I actually started making this video. I made a 28-minute video, but every time I try to put it onto my desktop, it gets to 69%, and then it freezes my whole computer up, and I can't even take a screenshot of it to prove it, because it's done it like 10 times now. It's like froze everything up, but it just gives me this video. So that's why I'm remaking this video. But, interesting. Nike. The reason that's important to Mac Miller is because if you know Mac Miller, he has a song on one of his mixtapes called Nike's on My Feet. So just think about all the Nike symbolism. I mean, it's still going strong. You get on Facebook, everybody's doing Nike memes and whatever else. Nike is really important right now in the theming, and a guy who has the song Nike's on My Feet just so happens to die right around the same time. Doesn't that seem a little bit fishy? I mean, people get murdered by these numbers all of the time. And I mean, the band Slipknot has a song called Gematria, the killing name, and, they don't call it that for a reason. Or for no reason. Anyway, like I said, also September 3rd is special because it's the day that leaves 119 days in the year. And if you write out the Star-Spangled Banner, let's just show you again here, it equals 119. But we also got that story about Roseanne Barr moving to Israel once the Connors come out. Roseanne Cherry Barr equals 119 in Gematria. And her racist tweet was against Valerie June Jarrett. That equals 119 in Gematria. Francis Scott Key even died 119 days after the anniversary of writing the national anthem. There's another form of Gematria where they use capital letters called Francis Bacon Gematria, where capital letters are higher up. So A through Z is 1 through 26, but in Francis Bacon, a capital A would be worth 27, and a capital B would be worth 28, and so on. And if you write out Saturn that way, it equals 119. Also, the story about Eminem in Jewish Gematria equals 119. And Marshall Mathers, 93. What are the odds of that? We get a story about MGK dissing Marshall Mathers on 9/3, and he equals 93. It's the day that leaves 119 days in the year. Eminem equals 119. And let's look at Mac Miller's birthday here. Mac Miller, what are the odds that his birthday, January 19th, a lot like 119? You know? The national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. Roseanne Barr, too. The reason she's important, if you don't know, she also was famous for singing a terrible rendition of the national anthem at the Cincinnati Reds game in 1990. And then the Reds even went on to win the World Series later that year. But her connection to the national anthem is the reason they brought her show back, and it's also the reason that it got canceled when it did. Because when her episode came back, it came back on the 223rd episode, and the Star Spangled Banner equals 223. Kaepernick equals 223. War of 1812 equals 223. And if you notice, it also got canceled after the 231st episode. And look what National Anthem equals in Gematria. National Anthem, it got canceled after the 231st episode. And the Connors are coming out 147 days after Roseanne's 231st episode got canceled. How synced up to the National Anthem can it be? Absolutely synced up to the National Anthem. And better yet, that final episode of Roseanne was even called Knee Deep. What are the odds of that? Knee deep? I mean, just think about that. Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. That's why Teddy Bridgewater's still important to all of this. That's why he got traded to the Saints. Not going to go into a big old thing, but it's all to do with the supposed Madden Jacksonville video game shooting, right? And the guy was from Baltimore. The shooter was from Baltimore. That's where Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. And Andrew Jackson, who Jacksonville's named after, is famous for winning the Battle of New Orleans, and that was the last major battle of the War of 1812. And then Teddy Bridgewater, he just got traded to New Orleans, and that day that Colin Kaepernick knelt, the 239th day of 2016, it was also the same day that we had a Bridgewater shooting in 2015, that big fake shooting where they first showed a white guy and then they showed a black guy. It made absolutely no sense whatsoever, and a bunch of people got copyright strikes and whatnot on their YouTube videos. But that Bridgewater shooting, and then now Teddy Bridgewater's going to New Orleans. But the reason it's important, remember, he hurt his knee right after Colin Kaepernick took the knee against the Packers and whatnot. So anyway, now that you know, the Star Spangled Banner equals 119, just like Roseanne Cherry Barr, Valerie June Jarrett, and 9/3, that important date in Nike, right? And Colin Kaepernick kneeling and being the face of Nike. It's all synced up to that number 119. And then Mac Miller's birthday just so happens to be January 19th. If you go from his birthday to the day that he died, 231 days. Remember, National Anthem equals 231? And he was also 26 years old. The word flag equals 26 in Gematria. His full name, too, his real name, Malcolm James McCormick, equals 88 in Gematria. Just like Colin Kaepernick, just like the Star Spangled Banner, just like Neil, and so on. So what else is interesting is that, we just had his ex-girlfriend was Ariana Grande, and she was just recently in the mainstream media for, being in Detroit singing at Aretha Franklin's funeral, and she was in there for, her poor taste of dressing, and then Bill Clinton staring at her, and then the one pastor was trying to grope her and whatnot. And oddly enough, look at her name in Gematria, Ariana Grande. 93, it also equals 231. Think about how he died 231 days after his birthday. National Anthem equals 231. Roseanne, who also studies Kabbalah, like Ariana Grande, her show got canceled after the 231st episode. Ariana Grande's full name, Ariana Grande Butera, however you say it, 119. I mean, it just can't be any more perfect for this code to the national anthem. She was also born in the year 93, and her first debut album came out on 93, and that Manchester Arena attack that just happened with her, that place broke ground in the year 93. Think about Bill Clinton staring at her too. Bill Clinton became the president in the year 93. Think about the 93 World Trade Center attack, right? The World Trade Center bombing that happened on the same day of the Warrington bombings that the song Zombie by the Cranberries is a tribute to. And just recently got that story about Dolores O'Riordan, the singer of the Cranberries. They waited how long after she died to tell us that she drowned in a bathtub. And there's been some drowning symbolism that I've talked about too, you know, if you've been following my channel. I'm not going to go on a tangent with that, but, you know, absolutely synced up. And I will talk a little bit more about it in a little bit, because the other rapper that we had that died earlier this year was XXXTentacion, or however you say it. And we got a story of his niece, I think it was his niece, who drowned in the pool in Jamaica. They were on this thing of Tupac being in Jamaica sipping daiquiris. You know, and Mac Miller's last album was called Swimming, right? Makes us think of drowning and, you know, or not drowning, the opposite of drowning, really. Swimming and drowning. Ariana Grande's, that concert attack also happened 223, it was the day that leaves 223 days in the year. Just like War of 1812, Kaepernick, the Star-Spangled Banner. It was also 35 days before her birthday. And Mac Miller's final album came out 35 days before he died. Also, Francis Scott Key was 35 years old when he wrote the national anthem. And he wrote the national anthem on the date of 14/9. 149 is the 35th prime number. Also, in regards to this XXXTentacion guy, he died on June 18th of 2018. June 18th just so happens to also be the anniversary of the War of 1812 beginning. So how interesting. And notice his birthday, 23/1, 231. And then we just have Mac Miller die 231 days after his birthday. His ex-girlfriend, Ariana Grande, equals 231 in Gematria, just like national anthem. Also, when you look up Ariana Grande, you find out that the first national television appearance of her was singing the Star-Spangled Banner for the Florida Panthers, right? Just interesting, her first national television appearance, singing the Star-Spangled Banner, and it was for the Florida Panthers, which just reminds me of the Carolina Panthers in Super Bowl 50, and that Super Bowl was held in Levi's Stadium, where the 49ers play, reminding us of Colin Kaepernick. And, you know, remember that Super Bowl is all about the White Panther versus the Black Panther versus the White Bronco. Then O.J. Simpson, they made a TV show about O.J. Simpson, right? Think about O.J. Simpson and the White Bronco. Then the White Bronco goes on to win the Super Bowl. Absolutely rigged Super Bowl, just like all the other ones, but there's also something going on with Ariana Grande and that Jacksonville shooter. His name was David Katz, and we talked about how, you know, a jaguar is a cat, and then in New Orleans, 43 days before, there was a story of a jaguar escaping the zoo, and Jacksonville equals 43, just like John Madden, just like the word football. But Ariana Grande, her name is actually inspired by Felix the cat. And she's also famous for being Cat Valentine on the Disney show Sam and Cat. So there's more I need to figure out with that, but definitely interesting. Something to do with a cat theme. Mac Miller also died 134 days before his next birthday, which is interesting because, thinking about football, Vesica Pisces equals 134, and that's what the football is shaped after. The Vesica Pisces, it's all to do with sacred geometry, which stems back to the things that I'm talking about. Much, much more I could explain about that, but we'll just move on here. His last album came out on 8/3 as well. The word football equals 83. It's also Tom Brady's birthday. Peyton Manning born on the 83rd day of the year. So one last thing in regards to all of this and in regards to all of the theming that is going on, there's definitely something going on with JFK. And I was looking through some of the comments and I saw that Casey Jones, someone who leaves comments a lot on my channel or whatever, and he had talked about the number 510 in one of his videos. I went and I was listening to one of his videos, and anyway, in this video he mentions, first off, what are the odds that he randomly makes this video on September 4th talking about Ariana Grande and Mac Miller and Eminem and whatever else, right? He's just keyed into the whatever is going on, the frequency of however they're doing this, right? And what he talks about in this video, though, is that Ariana Grande and Mac Miller broke up on the date of May 10th this year. And a while back, I was mentioning a lot about the number 510 and how it was important to Donald Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un, and also how it was synced up to JFK. And, we have James Franco, who was in that movie The Campaign, where he's trying to assassinate Kim Jong-un. And he's also in the TV show 11/22/63. That's all about him going back to stop the assassination of JFK. And John Kennedy in Gematria equals 510. And Francis Scott Key just so happened to die 5 months and 10 days after his birthday. And Trump's birthday this year on Flag Day was also his 510th day of being the president. And also the Korea equals 510. And on May 10th this year, they announced the Trump-Kim Summit on May 10th. And they called it a Peace Summit. Peace Summit equals 510 in Gematria. Kim Jong-un, a couple years back, even murdered his brother on the date of 510. He murdered his brother, but his brother was born on 510. The word basketball equals 510. And think about Dennis Rodman and the basketball diplomacy. There's a bunch of 510 that's interesting. And I noticed American flag equals 510 as well. And Roseanne, when she got canceled on May 29th, that was the anniversary of JFK's birthday. So there's something going on with JFK there. And even recently, we've had all these white rapper stories. So we had MGK diss Eminem, then Eminem's new album cover was a tribute to the Beastie Boys, who are white rappers. And then we got the story of Vanilla Ice being on the quarantined airplane that had to land at JFK Airport, right? JFK. And just thinking about that, it reminded me of the movie Malibu's Most Wanted with Jamie Kennedy. Possibly nothing, but, he's the white guy. He wants to be the famous rapper or whatever. Just a play on Eminem's 8 Mile and whatnot, right? But his name is Jamie Kennedy. And he's even from Philadelphia, where the flag is sewn. So, there's something interesting about JFK in regards to all of this. Roseanne being canceled on the anniversary of JFK's birthday. We've recently had Marilyn Manson and Rose McGowan back in the news. And clear back in last October, I was talking about both of them because she used to date Marilyn Manson, and she's in the video called Coma White, where they reenact the JFK assassination. And at the end of last October is when Trump released the JFK files, and then we got a story about never before seen photos of Marilyn Monroe. Think about Marilyn Monroe in regards to JFK. And also, Marilyn Manson got his name after Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson. And then Charles Manson died, not even a month later in November after I talked about all this. And I talked about how Charles Manson was important to the kneeling during the national anthem because he has the helter-skelter theory about the blacks rising up. And the Beatles song Blackbird was telling the blacks to rise up. That's why in 2016, when Colin Kaepernick first knelt, the Atlanta Falcons made the Super Bowl. Think about it, they're the Blackbird, and their slogan was even Rise Up. And Paul McCartney was the one who wrote both of them songs. His birthday this year is 231 days before the Super Bowl. National anthem equals 231. And also after Justin Timberlake showed Janet Jackson's boob, the next year they had Paul McCartney do the halftime show of the Super Bowl because they wanted a safe bet so that wouldn't happen again. So they had Paul McCartney do the national anthem there, or do the halftime show. So there's absolutely something very important to all of this and how it's connected to the assassination of JFK. Also, in regards to Blackbird, think about the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are the Blackbird. The Falcons are the Blackbird. Baltimore Ravens in Gematria. Baltimore Ravens equals the same as National Anthem, 231. Their coach, John Harbaugh, his birthday is 23/9. That number syncing up to where the flag was sewn in Philadelphia and Donald Trump. Also, they're the team that Colin Kaepernick played against in the Super Bowl when they threw the ball 3 times instead of running it and winning the Super Bowl. It was the Harbaugh. It was Harbaugh versus Harbaugh. And they played that in Mercedes-Benz in the Mercedes-Benz State Superdome in New Orleans, right? And this year the Super Bowl's in Atlanta, and it's in the new stadium Mercedes-Benz that opened on the same day Colin Kaepernick knelt. And the same day we got that Jacksonville shooting. That Super Bowl was also the Super Bowl where we had the blackout, the 34-minute blackout on the 34th day of the year. Ravens equal 34. When the blackout happened, the score totaled 34 points. Joe Flacco equals 34. This year he's going to turn 34 years old just before the Super Bowl. And in Jewish gematria, the word flag even equals 34. So it's absolutely connected. We even had that blackout at the airport in Atlanta last year just before the Super Bowl, I believe. So possibly we'll get a blackout again at the Super Bowl, or possibly it's connected to, the Ravens are definitely a team that I'm going to be watching big time. They got a lot of interesting connections. It's where the flag was, or the Star Spangled Banner was written. The Blackbird, definitely a team to watch out for. Maybe they won't make the Super Bowl, but they're definitely going to be absolutely used in the coding that exists. Anyway, I'm just going to leave it there. There's a bunch of other stuff I could talk about. I feel that the last video that I made was way better and way more on point. My train of thought isn't as clear as it was the other night. And it sucks that video, it is really funny that video always freezes my computer after 69%, and Saturn equals 60 died. So, Mac Miller. I didn't even show you that. Mac Miller's song here. Nike's on my feet. Even you know what, that Super Bowl, the Harbaugh, if you go look it up on YouTube, whoever put it on YouTube, It's 2 hours and 39 minutes. And that final drive starts with 2 minutes and 39 seconds. The drive where the 49ers blew the game. 2 minutes, 39 seconds, and Colin Kaepernick kneels on the 239th day of the year. You know, the flag zone at 239 Arch Street. There's something. I know I'm dragging this out, but a few years back, before the Falcons made the Super Bowl, I was talking about how Francis Scott Key sounds a lot like Francis Got Key, and in the Bible it talks about the key of David, and it talks about it in regards to Philadelphia, and Jesus is supposed to have the key of David, right? And key of David in Gematria equals 1,189, just like Donald J. Trump. And in 2016, it was still the 239th year of the United States, and on that day, Pope Francis's 1,189th day of being the Pope was on Donald Trump's birthday, which is Flag Day, and there's 1,189 chapters in the King James Bible. And then the very next day after I talked about that, we got the death of an ex-Atlanta Falcons player named Keon Carpenter. Keon Carpenter, think about his name. Keon Carpenter, Jesus the Carpenter, the key on the carpenter. I mean, I thought to myself, no way, what are the odds I mentioned something so random and then we get the death of a guy named Keon Carpenter. Also, you know what, one last thing I didn't point out was Roseanne Barr and Colin Kaepernick are even born on the same day. They're both born on November 3rd. November 3rd, so we'll leave it there. You got to understand what I'm talking about. It's all synced up to the same numbers. It's all synced up to the same central theme. Have a good one. Peace.